There is a version of you that exists only in the minds of other people, and it is nothing like who you actually are. Right now, someone out there remembers you as cruel when you were just protecting yourself. Someone else remembers you as weak when you were simply being vulnerable. And someone somewhere has built an entire story about who you are, based on a single moment, a single sentence, a single expression on your face that they misread completely. This is the uncomfortable truth about human perception. We are all walking around with distorted versions of each other in our heads, judging, categorizing, making assumptions based on fragments of information filtered through our own wounds and biases. And the most unsettling part is that you do this too. You have created entire narratives about people you barely know, assigned motivations to their behaviors, decided who they are based on how they made you feel in one interaction. We are all unreliable narrators of each other's stories. And once you understand this, once you really sit with how little we actually know about the people around us and how little they know about us, everything changes. You stop taking things so personally. You stop assuming you know what someone meant by what they said or did. You start recognizing that most conflict, most misunderstanding, most pain between people comes from this gap between who we are and who others think we are. And today we are diving into 40 of the most uncomfortable psychological truths about human behavior. The things we would rather not acknowledge about ourselves and others. The patterns that make us squirm because they force us to confront how irrational, how defensive, how deeply flawed we all are. These are not gentle observations. These are the truths that challenge our carefully constructed self-image, that reveal the unconscious mechanisms we use to protect our egos, that show us how much of our behavior is driven by fear and insecurity, rather than conscious choice. But discomfort is where growth lives. Discomfort is the doorway to real self-awareness. And if you have the courage to look at these truths without flinching, without defending, without immediately rejecting what makes you uncomfortable, you will come out of this with a deeper understanding of yourself and every person you encounter. So let us begin. People who hesitate before answering a simple question are usually calculating what version of the truth will serve them best in that moment. The hesitation is not confusion, it is strategy. Their brain is rapidly running through scenarios, weighing consequences, deciding how much honesty is safe or advantageous right now. And we all do this, constantly, even about things that feel insignificant. Someone asks how you are, and you hesitate because you are deciding whether to say fine or to risk actual honesty. Someone asks what you think, and you pause because you are measuring whether your real opinion will create conflict or cost you something. This is not necessarily manipulation, though it can be. It is often just survival. We have learned through painful experience that full transparency is not always rewarded, that sometimes the truth gets weaponized against us, that there are social costs to being too real. So we hesitate, we calculate, we perform the version of ourselves that the moment seems to require. And the tragedy is that we become so good at this performance that we lose touch with what we actually think and feel beneath all the calculation. If someone over-explains their actions or decisions, they are almost certainly carrying guilt or anxiety about being judged. Over-explanation is a defense mechanism, a preemptive strike against anticipated criticism. They are trying to justify themselves before you even question them, trying to build such an airtight case that you cannot possibly find fault. This pattern usually develops in environments where the person was frequently criticized, where their choices were regularly questioned, where they learned that simple statements were never enough, and they had to defend their right to exist in the way they chose to exist. So now, even with people who are not judging them, even in situations where no justification is needed, they over-explain. They tell you why they bought that shirt, why they chose that restaurant, why they are tired, why they need a day off, building elaborate justifications for things that require no justification at all. And underneath all those words is a person who does not trust that they are allowed to simply want what they want, choose what they choose, be who they are without having to earn that right through explanation. If you catch yourself over-explaining, pause. Notice the impulse. Ask yourself who you are really defending yourself against. Because most of the time it is not the person in front of you. It is the internalized voice of someone from your past who made you believe you had to justify your existence. People who fidget often are not just restless, They are usually processing anxiety or trauma that their body cannot fully discharge. Fidgeting is the nervous system's attempt to release energy that has nowhere else to go, to soothe itself through repetitive motion, to create a sense of control in a body that feels fundamentally unsafe. The tapping foot, the clicking pen, the picked cuticles, the twisted hair. These are not annoying habits. They are survival mechanisms. They are a body trying to regulate itself, trying to manage an internal state of activation that the conscious mind might not even be fully aware of. And the uncomfortable truth is that telling someone to stop fidgeting does not help. It just adds shame to an already dysregulated nervous system. What actually helps is addressing the underlying anxiety or trauma, learning nervous system regulation techniques, finding healthy ways to discharge that accumulated energy. But we live in a culture that pathologizes visible signs of distress while praising people who suffer quietly. So fidgeters are told they are distracting, unprofessional, making others uncomfortable, when really they are just doing their best to exist in a body that feels like a cage of unprocessed stress. If someone lowers their voice when speaking to you, they are either trying to create intimacy or they are saying something they do not want others to hear. The lowered voice is an invitation into a private space, a signal that what is being shared is meant only for you. But it can also be manipulation, a way to make you feel special, chosen, included in something secret. Pay attention to what is being said in that lowered voice. Is it genuine vulnerability, or is it gossip? Is it authentic sharing, or is it triangulation, pulling you into an alliance against someone else? Because the lowered voice creates a sense of closeness that can make you overlook the actual content of what is being said. It makes you feel like a confidant, like you are being trusted with something important, and that feeling can override your critical thinking. Some people use this strategically, knowing that whispering something makes it feel more true, more significant, more bonding. So when someone lowers their voice, yes, lean in, but also stay aware. Notice what they are actually saying and why they might need to say it quietly. People who lean back when you are speaking are usually creating physical distance because they feel emotionally overwhelmed or defensive. Leaning back is the body's way of saying, I need more space. This is too much. I am not ready for this level of intensity. It can happen when you are sharing something heavy, and they do not know how to hold it. It can happen when they disagree, but do not feel safe saying so directly. It can happen when you are coming on too strong, pushing too hard for connection or agreement. The lean back is a boundary, a subtle signal that you are crossing into territory they are not comfortable occupying right now. And the uncomfortable truth is that most people do not consciously notice they are doing it, which means they are also not articulating what they need, leaving you to either pick up on the nonverbal cue or push through their discomfort without realizing it. If you notice someone physically pulling away from you during conversation, pause. Check in. Give them space to express what is happening for them rather than barreling forward with your agenda. And I need to stop here for a moment and ask you something that might sting a little. Have you ever realized, maybe days or weeks later, that you completely misread a situation or misjudged someone because you were filtering everything through your own fears and insecurities? Have you ever discovered that the story you built about why someone did something had nothing to do with their actual reasons? If yes, leave a comment below. Something simple like, I create stories that are not true, because acknowledging this pattern, naming it out loud, is the first step in breaking it. And when you share that, you are helping someone else recognize that they do this too, that we are all making up narratives about each other constantly. So go ahead, comment, and then let me continue showing you just how unreliable we all are. People who constantly interrupt are usually not listening. They are waiting for their turn to talk while you are still speaking. Interrupting is not about enthusiasm or being engaged. It is about ego. It is about someone who values their own thoughts more than your completion of yours. And the most uncomfortable part of this truth is how often we all do it without realizing. We think we are being conversational, adding to the flow, but what we are actually doing is centering ourselves, making sure our perspective gets heard, even if it means cutting off someone else mid-thought. Chronic interrupters were often raised in environments where you had to fight for attention, where being quiet meant being forgotten, where the loudest voice won. So they learned to interrupt as survival, and now they do it automatically, even when there is no competition, even when the space is safe. If you are an interrupter, Practice the excruciating discomfort of staying silent, even when you have something to say. Let someone finish completely. Wait 3 full seconds after they stop talking, and then speak. That pause will feel eternal, but it is necessary. It is how you break the pattern of making every conversation about you. People who never admit they are wrong have such fragile egos that being incorrect feels like annihilation. For them, mistakes are not just errors. They are evidence of fundamental unworthiness. So they twist reality, move goalposts, rewrite history, anything to avoid the devastating experience of being wrong. And the uncomfortable truth is that these people are impossible to have healthy relationships with because they will sacrifice connection to preserve their self-image. They will gaslight you, blame you, make you doubt your own memory and perception, rather than say the simple words, "I was wrong." This rigidity comes from deep shame, from a childhood where mistakes were met with ridicule or punishment, where being wrong meant being unlovable. But understanding where it comes from does not make it any less exhausting to deal with. If you love someone like this, you have to accept that they may never be able to give you the accountability you deserve. And if you are someone like this, please understand that admitting fault does not make you less than, it makes you human. The people who love you do not need you to be perfect. They need you to be real. When someone gives you a compliment and then immediately follows it with criticism, the compliment was just a spoonful of sugar to make the criticism easier to swallow. This is called a compliment sandwich, and it is manipulation disguised as kindness. The person wants to say something negative but does not want to deal with your defensive reaction, so they soften the blow with something positive first, deliver the real message, and then maybe add another positive note at the end to make you feel like the interaction was balanced. But your nervous system knows the truth. It registers the criticism as the core message and dismisses the compliments as filler. If someone consistently gives you backhanded compliments or positive statements that are immediately undermined by a "but," they are not actually being nice, they are being passive-aggressive. And you do not have to accept this dynamic. You can call it out. You can say, if you have criticism, just give it to me directly. I do not need it wrapped in false praise. Real kindness is direct. It says hard things with care, but without the manipulation of pretending to be something else first. People who are excessively private are usually protecting themselves from being used or betrayed. Privacy is not always about having something to hide. It is often about having been hurt when you were open and learning that information is power that can be weaponized. Excessively private people have usually experienced situations where their vulnerability was used against them, where things they shared in confidence became ammunition in arguments, where their weaknesses were exploited. So they learned to reveal nothing, to keep their cards close, to maintain such tight control over their narrative that no one can ever have enough information to hurt them. This is a lonely way to live. It is safe, yes, but it is also isolating, because real intimacy requires risk. It requires giving people access to your tender places and trusting that they will not abuse that access. If you are someone who struggles to open up, know that not everyone is the people who hurt you. Some people are safe. Some people will hold your stories with care. But you have to be willing to take the risk of finding out, because a life without vulnerability is a life without real connection. If someone constantly talks about how honest and direct they are usually justifying their tendency to be cruel. Honesty without compassion is just cruelty with a justification. The person who prides themselves on telling it like it is and not sugarcoating anything is often someone who enjoys the power of making others uncomfortable and has found a socially acceptable way to do it. They call it honesty, but what they are really doing is using truth as a weapon. Because yes, you can be honest, but you can also be kind. You can deliver hard truths with care. You can be direct without being brutal. The people who brag about their bluntness are usually the ones who have never examined why they feel the need to hurt people under the guise of truth. And the uncomfortable reality is that most of us have been that person at some point, wielding honesty like a sword and pretending it was for someone else's good, when really it was about our own need to feel superior or to discharge our own discomfort by making someone else feel it instead. People who make everything about them are usually desperate for validation that they matter. Conversational narcissism is not always pathological narcissism. Sometimes it is just a person who is so starved for attention and significance that they compulsively redirect every topic back to themselves. Someone shares a struggle and they immediately respond with a bigger struggle of their own. Someone celebrates a win, and they have to mention their own achievement. They are not trying to diminish you, though that is the effect. They are trying to prove to themselves that they exist, that their experiences count, that they are worthy of space in the conversation. This often comes from childhoods where they were ignored, where they had to perform for scraps of attention, where their needs were consistently deprioritized. So now they overcompensate, making sure no one can ignore them, making sure they are always centered. If you do this, please hear me. You do not have to earn your place in every conversation. You can let someone else have the spotlight without it meaning you do not matter. Your significance is not determined by how much airtime you get. And learning to be a generous listener, to let other people be seen without competing for attention, is how you actually build the meaningful connections you are craving. When someone laughs at a joke at your expense and then says, "Just kidding," they were not kidding. The joke revealed their actual thoughts, and the "just kidding" is a cowardly attempt to avoid accountability for what they just expressed. This is one of the most passive-aggressive moves in human communication, disguising hostility as humor, and then acting like you are too sensitive when you react to the hostility. Because humor is a socially acceptable way to say things we are not supposed to say directly. It is a loophole for expressing aggression, contempt, or cruelty while maintaining plausible deniability. And the person making the joke knows exactly what they are doing. They are testing to see if they can get away with insulting you. And if you push back, they act like you are the problem for not being able to take a joke. But you are not too sensitive. You are appropriately responding to disrespect masked as levity. And you have every right to call it out, to say that was not funny, that actually hurt, and I need you to not do that again. Real jokes bring people together. They do not tear someone down while everyone else laughs. If this video is making you uncomfortable, if you are recognizing yourself in some of these patterns and feeling defensive or exposed, that is actually a good sign. It means you are growing. Leave a like if you are willing to sit with the discomfort of self-awareness, rather than running from it, because that willingness is what separates people who evolve from people who stay stuck. People who never ask questions about you are either self-absorbed or not genuinely interested. Curiosity is the foundation of connection. When someone cares about you, they want to know you, which means asking questions, remembering answers, following up on things you previously mentioned. If you are always the one asking questions, always the one drawing the other person out, always the one maintaining the conversation, you are in a one-sided dynamic. And the uncomfortable truth is that you might be more invested in the relationship than they are. This does not make you pathetic or them evil. It just means there is an imbalance that you need to acknowledge, because you deserve reciprocity. You deserve relationships where curiosity flows both ways, where you are not the only one doing the emotional labor of keeping the connection alive. If someone consistently shows no interest in your life, believe that lack of interest. Stop overcompensating for it, and start investing your energy in people who actually want to know you. People who are always busy when you need them, but expect you to drop everything for them, are showing you exactly how little they value you. Availability is a choice. We make time for what matters to us. When someone is consistently unavailable to you but demands your availability for them, they are telling you that your needs are secondary, that the relationship exists to serve them, not to be mutual. And the most uncomfortable part of this dynamic is how long we tolerate it, making excuses for them, telling ourselves they are just overwhelmed or stressed, convincing ourselves that we are being understanding when really we are being used. There is a difference between supporting someone through a genuinely difficult season and being someone's emotional support animal who is only valued when they need something. If you find yourself always accommodating someone who never accommodates you, you are not in a relationship. You are in a transaction, and you are getting the losing end of it. When someone constantly points out your flaws while ignoring their own, they are projecting. Projection is the psychological defense mechanism where we attribute our own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or behaviors to someone else. The person who accuses you of being selfish is usually acting selfishly. The person who constantly warns you about being lied to is probably lying. The person who criticizes your emotional reactions is probably suppressing their own. They cannot face these qualities in themselves, so they externalize them, seeing them in you instead. And this is one of the most crazy-making dynamics to be on the receiving end of, because you are being blamed for things you are not doing, while the actual perpetrator maintains their sense of innocence. If someone is constantly criticizing you for behaviors they themselves exhibit, you are dealing with projection. And no amount of defending yourself will change their perception, because the perception is not actually about you, it is about their inability to own their own shadow. People who gossip to you will gossip about you. This is not cynicism. This is pattern recognition. Someone who builds intimacy through talking about others is someone whose loyalty is conditional and whose boundaries are porous. They will share your private information just as easily as they share others, justifying it the same way, convincing themselves it is not really gossip. It is just venting or seeking advice or being honest. But gossip is gossip, and people who engage in it regularly are not safe people to be vulnerable with. If you notice that every conversation with someone involves discussing other people's business, understand that you are also other people to them, and when you are not there, they are discussing yours. This does not mean you have to cut off everyone who ever mentions another person. But it does mean noticing who builds connection through triangulation and who builds connection through direct, authentic sharing. When someone says you are too sensitive, they are usually avoiding accountability for how their actions affected you. Calling someone too sensitive is a manipulation tactic designed to make you doubt your own emotional responses and let the other person off the hook for causing harm. It reframes the issue from their behavior to your reaction, making you the problem instead of them. And it is incredibly effective because most of us already doubt our emotional validity, already wonder if we are overreacting, already have internalized messages about being too much. So when someone confirms that fear, when they tell us we are too sensitive, we often shrink, apologize, try to be less sensitive next time. But your sensitivity is not the problem. Your feelings are not wrong for existing. What is wrong is someone refusing to acknowledge that they hurt you and instead blaming you for being hurt. If someone consistently dismisses your emotions as excessive, they are not a safe person to be emotional with. And you are not too sensitive. You are just sensitive to the wrong person. People who love bomb you in the beginning are usually setting you up for devaluation later. Love bombing is the practice of showering someone with excessive attention, affection, and praise early in a relationship to create intense bonding and dependency. It feels incredible at first, like you have finally found someone who sees you, who adores you, who thinks you are everything you have always wanted to be seen as. But it is a manipulation tactic. The person is not actually connecting with who you really are. They are performing a fantasy to hook you, to make you so invested so quickly that you will tolerate mistreatment later. And later always comes. Once they feel they have secured you, once they know you are attached, the love bombing stops and the devaluation begins. Suddenly you cannot do anything right. Suddenly the person who thought you were perfect now thinks you are fundamentally flawed. And because you remember how good it was in the beginning, you keep trying to get back to that, not realizing that the beginning was never real. If someone is coming on extremely strong, promising you the world, idealizing you before they actually know you, be cautious. Real love builds slowly, with consistency and depth. Instant intensity is almost always a red flag. When someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. This is Maya Angelou's famous wisdom, and it is uncomfortable because it requires us to stop making excuses for people. When someone tells you they are not good at relationships, they are warning you. When someone tells you they always hurt people they love, they are telling you what they will do to you. When someone tells you they are selfish or broken or incapable of commitment, they are being honest. And our instinct is to think we will be different, we will be the exception. Our love will heal them or change them or make them want to be better. But people tell you who they are as a form of self-protection. They are giving you the information you need to make an informed choice about whether to proceed. And when you ignore that information, when you choose to believe in your fantasy of who they could be, rather than accepting who they are telling you they are right now, you are setting yourself up for pain. So listen. Really listen. And believe people the first time they tell you who they are, even if who they are is not who you want them to be. People who refuse to apologize are more committed to their ego than to the relationship. An apology is an act of humility. It requires setting aside defensiveness, acknowledging impact over intent, and prioritizing the other person's pain over your own need to be right. And some people simply cannot do it. They will justify, minimize, deflect, blame, do absolutely anything except say I am sorry, I hurt you. and I take responsibility for that. This is ego protection at its most destructive, and it destroys relationships slowly, one unresolved hurt at a time. Because when harm is never acknowledged, when pain is never validated, trust erodes. The wounded person learns that they cannot bring their hurt to the relationship and be met with care, so they stop bringing it. They stop being vulnerable. They start protecting themselves, building walls, disconnecting. And the person who could not apologize wonders why the relationship feels distant, why their partner seems shut down, not realizing that their inability to own their mistakes created the distance. If you struggle to apologize, ask yourself what you are protecting. Is your ego really more valuable than your relationships? And if someone in your life refuses to apologize to you, understand that you are not dealing with someone who values repairing harm, and you have to decide if you can live with that. When someone triangulates you into their conflicts with others, they are using you as a tool, rather than respecting you as a person. Triangulation is bringing a third party into a two-person conflict instead of addressing the issue directly with the person involved. Someone is mad at their partner, so they complain to you. Someone has a problem with a coworker, so they vent to you about it. And it feels like intimacy, like trust, like they are confiding in you. But what they are actually doing is avoiding the discomfort of direct confrontation by outsourcing their emotional processing to you. And in the process, they are putting you in an impossible position, asking you to take sides, to validate their perspective, to become complicit in their avoidance. Healthy people address issues directly with the person involved. They might seek support or perspective from a third party, but they do not substitute that for actual resolution. If someone is constantly pulling you into their drama with others, they are not being vulnerable with you. They are being manipulative. And you can set a boundary. You can say, I care about you, but I am not comfortable being in the middle of this. You need to talk to them directly. People who play devil's advocate in every conversation are usually more interested in being right than in understanding. Playing devil's advocate can be a valuable tool for exploring ideas, but when it is someone's default mode, when they cannot let a single statement stand without challenging it, it stops being intellectual curiosity and starts being ego. These are people who need to demonstrate their intelligence, who need to be the smartest person in every exchange, who cannot simply listen and affirm without inserting their contrary perspective. And it is exhausting, because sometimes people are not looking for debate, they are looking for connection. Sometimes someone shares something and they just want to be heard, not corrected or challenged or forced to defend their position. If you are a chronic devil's advocate, practice the radical act of just agreeing sometimes, of letting someone have their perspective without needing to show them all the ways it could be wrong. And if you are dealing with someone like this, you can call it out. You can say, I am not looking for a debate right now. I just need you to listen. And if you are still here, if you are still watching even though some of these truths are pointing directly at you, I want you to know something important. This channel exists because I believe in radical honesty, in looking at ourselves without flinching, in understanding human behavior at its most raw and real. Every week I create content about psychology, relationships, and self-awareness, always with this same depth and willingness to go to uncomfortable places. If you want to keep growing, keep learning, keep facing the parts of yourself that are hard to look at, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You will be joining a community of people who value truth over comfort, who are willing to do the hard work of becoming more conscious, more honest, more fully human. And now, let me keep going. When someone constantly needs reassurance, they are operating from such deep insecurity that no amount of external validation will ever be enough. Reassurance seeking is a bottomless pit. You can tell them they are loved, valued, worthy, beautiful, good enough, and they will believe it for approximately 5 minutes before the doubt creeps back in and they need to hear it again. This is not your failure. It is their wound. No external source can heal internal unworthiness. That healing has to come from within, from them doing the difficult work of examining where the insecurity came from and building a relationship with themselves that is not dependent on constant external affirmation. And the uncomfortable truth for the reassurance seeker is that their constant need for validation is often pushing people away, creating the very abandonment they fear. Because loving someone who can never be convinced they are loved is draining. It turns every interaction into emotional labor, every conversation into another opportunity to prove something that should not require constant proof. If you are someone who needs constant reassurance, please get support in addressing the core wound. And if you love someone like this, understand that you cannot fill that void for them, and trying to will exhaust you both. People who always play the victim are avoiding responsibility for their own role in their problems. Victim mentality is the psychological pattern where someone consistently sees themselves as powerless, as having things done to them, as never having agency or choice in how their life unfolds. Everything bad that happens is someone else's fault. Every problem is because of external circumstances. Every relationship that fails is because the other person wronged them. And this mindset is incredibly seductive because it absolves you of accountability. If nothing is ever your fault, you never have to examine your patterns, your choices, your contributions to your own suffering. But it also leaves you completely powerless. Because if you have no responsibility for what goes wrong, you also have no power to make anything right. Chronic victims stay stuck because they are waiting for external circumstances to change, for other people to fix them, for life to finally be fair. And life is not fair. People will wrong you. Bad things will happen that are not your fault. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stay in the story of what was done to you? Or are you going to reclaim your agency and build something new? Healing requires you to stop seeing yourself only as a victim and start recognizing yourself as someone who survived and who has choices now. When someone ghosts you, they are showing you they do not have the emotional maturity to communicate directly. Ghosting is the ultimate act of cowardice. It is choosing your own comfort over someone else's closure. Deciding that avoiding a difficult conversation is more important than treating another human with basic respect. And the person who was ghosted is left in limbo, wondering what happened, replaying every interaction looking for clues, often blaming themselves for something they did not even do wrong. Ghosting is not about you. It is about someone who is so conflict avoidant, so uncomfortable with their own feelings, so unable to articulate what they need, that they would rather disappear than have an honest conversation. And while it hurts, while it feels like a reflection of your worth, it is actually revealing their limitations, not your value. If someone ghosts you, the trash took itself out. You do not want to be in relationship with someone who handles difficulty by running and hiding. People who compare their trauma to yours are not connecting with you. They are competing with you. Pain is not a competition. Suffering is not something to be ranked. When you share something hard and someone immediately responds with, "Well, at least you did not go through what I went through," they are dismissing your pain, not relating to it. This often comes from people who never had their own pain validated, so they learn to fight for recognition of their suffering by minimizing others. But it creates disconnection, not connection. Because now you feel like you cannot share, like your struggles are not valid enough, like you have to meet some threshold of trauma to deserve empathy. And that is devastating. Real empathy meets people where they are. It honors that pain is pain, that your worst day is your worst day, regardless of what someone else has experienced. If you do this, if you find yourself one-upping people's pain, please examine what you are really seeking. Are you trying to connect, or are you trying to be seen as the one who suffered most? And if someone does this to you, you can say, "I am not comparing. I am just sharing something that hurt, and I need you to hear me without making it about you." When someone is consistently late, they are telling you that your time is less valuable than theirs. Chronic lateness is not just a quirky personality trait. It is a statement about priorities. It says, "I do not value you enough to honor our agreement." It says, "My time, my comfort, my disorganization is more important than your schedule, your respect, your boundaries." And people who are chronically late always have excuses. Traffic was bad. Something came up. I lost track of time. But these things happen to everyone. And most people still manage to be on time because they plan accordingly. They leave buffers. They prioritize punctuality. Chronic lateness is a choice, and it is a choice that shows a lack of respect. If you are always late, understand that you are training people to expect less from you, to stop inviting you, to see you as unreliable. And if someone is chronically late with you, stop making excuses for them. Stop waiting. Start enforcing consequences, even if the consequence is just not being available when they finally show up. People who cannot be happy for your success are threatened by it. When you win, and someone close to you responds with something that feels like support but actually undermines you, they are revealing their own insecurity. Congratulations, but that must have been easy for you, or I am happy for you. But I could never do that. Or that is great, followed by an immediate subject change to their own problems. These responses tell you that your success activates something painful in them, makes them feel inadequate or left behind, triggers comparison and envy. And while it is sad, while you might wish the people who love you could celebrate you without reservation, the uncomfortable truth is that not everyone in your life can handle your growth. Some people are only comfortable with you when you are struggling, when you need them, when you are at their level or below it. Your success makes them have to confront their own stagnation, and instead of using that as motivation, they resent you for triggering their discomfort. You do not have to shrink to make others comfortable. You do not have to downplay your wins to protect someone else's ego. Surround yourself with people who can genuinely celebrate you, and let the ones who cannot fall away naturally. When someone dismisses your feelings by saying you are overreacting, they are gaslighting you. Gaslighting is making someone question their own reality, their own perceptions, their own emotional responses. And one of the most common forms is being told you are too emotional, too dramatic, overreacting, making a big deal out of nothing. This is emotional invalidation disguised as reason. It positions the other person as the rational one and you as the unstable one, shifting power and making you doubt yourself. And it works. You start questioning whether you are too sensitive, whether you should have reacted differently, whether your feelings are justified. But your feelings do not need justification. They exist. They are valid. And telling you they are wrong is a form of psychological manipulation. If someone consistently tells you that you are overreacting to things that hurt you, you are not with someone who respects your emotional reality. You are with someone who wants to control the narrative by making you believe you are the problem. People who brag constantly are usually trying to convince themselves as much as they are trying to convince you. Chronic bragging is almost always a cover for insecurity. The person who cannot stop telling you about their accomplishments, their possessions, their connections, is someone who does not actually believe in their own worth and is seeking external validation that they matter. Truly confident people do not need to announce their value constantly because they are secure in it. Insecure people wear their achievements like armor, hoping that if they can just impress enough people, they will finally believe they are impressive themselves. And it has the opposite effect. It makes people uncomfortable, makes them feel like they are being compared to, makes them want to avoid the person who is always performing superiority. If you brag constantly, understand that you are revealing your insecurity, not your confidence. And if you are around someone who brags constantly, you can have compassion for the wound underneath, while also recognizing that their need for validation is not your responsibility to fill. When someone only reaches out when they need something, you are not a friend, you are a resource. Transactional relationships feel awful because they reveal that your value to the other person is conditional, based on what you can provide, rather than who you are. These are the people who disappear for months and suddenly reappear when they need a favor, advice, emotional support, or a connection you have. And they are often charming about it, making you feel special, making you feel helpful, triggering your people-pleasing tendencies, so you do not say no. But after they get what they need, they disappear again, until the next time they want something. This is not friendship. This is using someone. And the uncomfortable truth is that you teach people how to treat you. If you consistently make yourself available to someone who is never available to you, if you keep giving without receiving, you are reinforcing the dynamic. You have to be willing to stop being useful and see if the relationship survives. And if it does not, then you know it was never real to begin with. People who cannot handle being alone are usually running from themselves. Constant need for company, for noise, for distraction, for stimulation. This is often fear of stillness, fear of silence, fear of what comes up when there is nothing to distract from the internal experience. Because when you are alone with yourself, you have to face yourself. You have to feel what you have been avoiding. You have to confront the questions you have been outrunning. And for people who have built their entire identity around being needed, being social, being busy, being anything other than alone, solitude feels like death. But it is not death, it is birth. It is where you actually meet yourself, where you build a relationship with the person you will be with for your entire life. If you cannot be alone, if you need constant external validation and companionship to feel okay, that is a sign that you need to spend more time alone, not less. Learn to enjoy your own company. Learn to sit with discomfort without immediately reaching for distraction. Learn that being alone is not the same as being lonely, and that sometimes the most important relationship you can build is the one with yourself. And here we are, 40 uncomfortable truths about how humans actually behave when you strip away the pretense and look at the raw psychological patterns underneath. If you made it this far, you are clearly someone who values truth over comfort. Someone who is willing to look at the parts of human nature that most people avoid. And that willingness, that courage to see clearly without defending or denying, that is what creates real transformation. These truths are uncomfortable because they challenge the stories we tell ourselves. They reveal the patterns we would rather not acknowledge. They force us to confront how much of our behavior is driven by fear and wounding, rather than conscious choice. But knowing is the first step to changing. Awareness is the doorway to growth. And if you can hold these truths with both honesty and compassion, if you can see your patterns without shame, if you can recognize these behaviors in yourself and others and choose differently moving forward, you are doing the most important work a human can do. You are becoming conscious, you are breaking cycles, you are choosing authenticity over performance. And that is how we heal, not by pretending we are perfect, but by being brave enough to look at how imperfect we are and doing the work anyway. Keep watching, keep learning, keep growing, because you are exactly where you need to be.